Okay, I'd like to thank the team for coming in. I think, Commissioner, we'd agree with many of the points in your statement that what has happened is unacceptable, that it raises serious issues about how the service is managed, that it's a collective failure, and that people at all levels should be held to account. Now, there's a contradiction in that and your other public statements that the only one who won't be held to account is you, in that you've said that regardless of what the Oireachtas thinks, and presumably regardless of what the policing authority think, you yourself will not take responsibility for this and will not review your own position.
Deputy, I want to be very clear. I have never said I will not take responsibility for this. I am taking responsibility for this. From the time that this we became aware in 2014 that there was an issue raised, albeit in anonymous correspondence, I took responsibility for making sure that instructions were issued to address the issues that were contained in the correspondence. That is what has led us to this place. We went and we turned over the stones to see what exactly were we dealing with here. And the fact is that the actions that we have taken ever since 2014 have been put in place corrective actions that actually make us a better service, that ensure we deliver a better service to the community. And I have never said that I will not take responsibility. When we turn over stones, we will find things that are wrong. And our commitment is to making sure that we identify them, we put them right.
It wasn't just an anonymous correspondence that you got in 2014. You were also informed of this situation by the Medical Bureau, and the Minister told us the other night that in detailed correspondence to her, An Garda Síochana told her that you were satisfied that the correct procedures were in place. So do you accept now that in May 2014, actually the Minister was misled by An Garda Síochana?
The issues raised in the correspondence were not about the breath tests. They were about match checkpoints. They're two separate issues again. But in doing and in identifying that the procedures, we looked at all of the issues that were raised in the correspondence. We were satisfied that the issues raised in relation to the specific area in the correspondence were okay. But that didn't stop the Deputy Commissioner at the time going along on my instruction and making sure was there anything else that we didn't know. So looking at all of the procedures. And that's what's led to the audit or the review on the breath tests and the breath tests that were taking place. So we did that, and we take responsibility for making sure that we put corrections in place all of the time.
So you're saying the correction you put in place was the instruction to ensure that effective mechanisms were put in place, which I think was around March 2015. It
was March 2014.
Well, in your opening statement it says March
2015.
Yeah, that's in your opening statement. Sorry. Yet we know that 3 months after that, in the summer of 2015, the Medical Bureau informed you that they had conducted a pilot survey which showed that the figures were 100% overinflated. So when you found out in the summer of 2015 that your instruction in March 2015 had been ignored by your junior officers, assistant commissioners or whoever, what action did you take against those officers who ignored your instructions, and how many people were sanctioned for failing to implement them?
First of all, the Medical Bureau of Road Safety would always deal with the Garda Traffic Policy Bureau. So they would have been dealing with the Garda Traffic Policy Bureau, who were undertaking the audit, and the Deputy Commissioner can explain exactly the process of that and the sequencing of that.
And he can, and I'd be happy to hear it, but are you saying that you didn't know about that you'd issued an instruction in March about this? 3 months later, the Medical Bureau come in and give information which shows that that instruction clearly wasn't being carried out, but that nobody told you about that?
At that time, what I was aware of, that the process of the review was ongoing to establish exactly where. There's a process that has to be gone through. And were
you aware, were you not aware of the Medical Bureau at that time?
No, I wasn't aware of the Medical Bureau at that time.
Would you not accept that then there's somewhat a crisis of authority in your leadership? If you're issuing instructions which evidence is produced to show that your instructions are being ignored, and yet nothing happens to people who ignore those instructions?
Interject and help here, Chair. I spoke to the Medical Bureau in relation to this aspect. The audit that they did in early and middle of 2015 was in relation to an audit of their equipment. It was done by their people in their stores, talking to the people in our stores out in Santry where we keep the devices. That's the level where that conversation took place, and I was told that by the Professor himself.
Senior Garda management didn't know. It was kind of the lads in the stores had an idea of it, but nobody decided to tell senior management.
It was in the context of the Medical Bureau of Road Safety ordering the equipment for the following year, and their store spoke to the people in our store in relation to how many breath test devices or the tubes that they have in stock, the mouthpieces that they have in stock. I got that confirmed from the Medical Bureau myself in the last number of days when I was talking to the Professor there. So that's where that conversation took place. It wasn't happening at Commissioner level.
Okay, well, would that not indicate to you that you have a certain crisis of authority then? If issues which you now say have caused a national crisis, an absolute scandal because of the scale of them and because they're so totally unacceptable that nobody chose to ask?
I think the context when that conversation was taking place was in relation to procurement. Their procurement department, we're talking to our procurement department, and the obvious conversation was, well, how many do you have in stock versus how many do we have in stock?
It was actually after the tests that they carried out which showed that the figures were 100% overinflated. And Professor Cusack was on the airways the other morning. He made it very clear that it's actually quite simple to monitor these devices. Before the Garda goes out, you take a record of the number, and when he comes back, you take a record of that. He introduced that system, that, if you like, paper audit, in April of 2016. It's quite simple. Why didn't you do it in 2014 when you knew about this? And why did you ask and wait to ask until March 2017, after the Irish Times article, when the Medical Bureau had this information all along? You didn't need to have the internal audits. They had the information.
In November 2015, when the examination of the southern region was complete, they alerted that there were discrepancies in relation to the data. They were alerted the reason for the discrepancy in the context that they weren't able to, because we weren't recording.
For a time, Assistant Commissioner, I'm not rushing you, but I know it was in November. The point I'm asking is, why was it until April, 6 months later, and a full year later, after you were told for the second time by the Medical Bureau that she decided to implement, even at that stage, a paper trail, a paper account of the situation? Why did it take that length of time?
We knew in November.
I know that. I'm just asking, why did you wait until April to do it, is the question.
Perhaps maybe if I can attempt to address the issue. We became aware, the first action that we took was, there was two audits, and I suppose to try and explain the context of this. There's 1,200 machines spread over the...
I really don't mean to be rude, but I am conscious of time, and I have to ask the team to try and answer the question that you were asked. In November, Assistant Commissioner Finn says the information from the audit. I know that. The question is, why did you wait until April 2016 to even put in place a paper audit where the fellow be checked going in and going out? That's one question. The second question is, why did you wait for another full year, as in last week, to ask the Medical Bureau for that information when they had it all along? And the reason why I'm asking, it comes back to what you said earlier, Assistant Commissioner Finn, about data. You've apologised for data, and can you understand how difficult it is for us to accept any data from you, given what we've heard? So if you could answer those two questions. I have another one actually related to data, but I am conscious of time, so you need to kind of try and answer the question asked.
And I suppose, Deputy, at the outset, we are here today to try and provide every answer that we possibly can to give you. And just if I could maybe start at the data end of it. We have today, and we are trying to ensure today that our data is absolutely 100% accurate. And we have given a commitment that that data will be externally verified. What we were endeavouring to do was to try and reconcile our own figures. And I suppose there's 373,000 in excess checkpoints, and the 1.9 million breath tests come from those checkpoints. So we're grappling with huge numbers on a paper-based system.
Why did you wait 6 months to bring in the paper audit?
Because we were trying to fully understand exactly what was going on here, so to make sure that when we bring in something that it works. This is not something that can come in overnight. It's not something that you
could come in overnight, because it came in overnight in April 2016, and you waited a full months later before you had an IT solution. Actually, a paper solution could have come in. But look, we're kind of, you're not going to answer, give me any more meat on that. I want to come back to Assistant Commissioner Finn.
If I can try, Mr. to clarify the point, one last sentence.
Well, if they can answer the question that was asked, Chair, yes. Because, you know...
Yes. Just if you could conclude on that particular point.
November 2015 and April 2016, the detail of what was to be done was being examined by the people who subsequently signed off that the new procedure to be brought in would work. I mean, we knew there was an issue. What we didn't want to do was make another mistake by bringing in something that didn't answer or resolve the issue that we were trying to resolve. And that takes time. It does take time.
But you did bring in something in April, which was a temporary measure, so you could bring in the following thing. But on the question of data, because it is of huge significance, and I noted at the press conference, Assistant Commissioner Fring, you talked about checkpoints, and you told us that there was a figure of 400,000 checkpoints carried out during the period. How can we believe that figure, that was actually the amount of checkpoints carried out?
That's what we have recorded on our systems. If we can verify that, we certainly will. I was able to verify the breath tests by going to external sources like the Medical Bureau.
3 years to do it, in fairness, and what you're saying is that's what's on your system. So how can we take solace from that? I mean, just maybe you could comment on the fact that we're aware that a former Garda made internal reports and suggested that it was an instruction by management, actually, that there is a difference, as you know, when a checkpoint is set up, management instruct and set a target for each station as to how many checkpoints should be carried out by that station, that district, whatever. Obviously, events happen unexpectedly, so the target cannot be the scheduled. Checkpoints are often cancelled. But management, we are led to believe, issued an instruction to say that what should be recorded was the amount of checkpoints scheduled, not the actual checkpoints carried out. You're saying there was no instruction given on that. You're totally confident that the number of checkpoints returned on your system are the actual number of checkpoints that took place?
We record all the scheduled checkpoints. If a checkpoint isn't done, that checkpoint is invalidated on our pulse system, and we only measure the ones that are performed. We do not measure the invalidated ones when we're doing collating our data.
But a minute ago you said you weren't sure, that you needed to externally evaluate all of this, that's what's on your system.
That answer was in a different context. If you're asking me in relation to the checkpoints and what do we count, then I can tell you categorically that we measure the checkpoints that are not invalidated. We schedule more than we do, because obviously we don't know exactly what's going to happen in any particular night, so you schedule more than we know actually doing.
But you don't know the accuracy of whether the cancelled ones were actually, the ones
I can
fully
stand over you
that,
and categorically say that the data that we published only relates to validated checkpoints. Any checkpoint that was invalidated is not counted by our IT, so I can stand over.
You're totally satisfied with that, are you?
I am, yes.
Okay. I just want to briefly, Chair, deal with the issue of fixed charge notice, and I know that the Commissioner's opening remarks were very brief. The timelines that we were given, were, I suppose, half information in some ways, without being derogatory about it. You talked about in the timeline about the fixed charge notices for NCTs. Now, that was only 6% actually of the incorrect summonses that were issued. Are you saying that the communication to the Department of Justice and to the Policing Authority was in relation to the NCT fixed charge notices only?
I could try and initially, when we wrote to the department in June of that year, it was in relation to the offence of the NCT, but that we had to review all of our data back to 2016, because what we had learned at that stage was that an offence that should have been dealt with by fixed charge notice had been dealt with by a summons. So while the person had an offence to answer to, the procedure used was incorrect. So we knew from looking at that data, or we certainly questioned whether, if this could have applied to NCT data, could this have applied to other issues? And all other offences shifted from summonses to fixed charge notices over a number of years, from 2006 up to the current date.
That review, was that the review that was conducted in May? Was that review started in and around May?
No, in May.
It was just fixed charge notices?
Yeah, it's all fixed charge notices.
Oh yeah, but all NCT ones? Yeah.
No, in May what we had done was we introduced an IT fix to show that it couldn't happen, and we made sure that all cases before the courts were then withdrawn.
For all fixed charge notices?
For all summonses which should have had a fixed charge notice issued instead.
On that issue, but because your statement today, I think, or maybe it was the timeline, said that you had a solution, IT solution designed and rolled out, which prevents summonses from being created, in this circumstance. I know the Minister gave a report to the Houses yesterday that at her meeting with you, Commissioner, you told her that operating practices were in place to ensure that these practices have now ceased, and that a permanent and comprehensive IT solution means that errors cannot be repeated. That's what the Minister told us after. I just wonder, how confident are you that that's the case, and how confident can we be that that's the case, and the public particularly?
Well, I think, as I sit here, this morning, we can be absolutely confident that in that particular issue, it will not happen again. The IT solution has ensured that it's not technically possible to issue a summons for a fixed charge notice without that having been done.
And that was put in July of this year, was it? Last year?
May of 2016.
May of 2016.
No.
Well, I wonder how you could tell me then that I was summoned to the CCJ on the 12th of December last year for an alleged motoring offence which allegedly took place in March of 2016, where no fixed charge notice was issued.
Well, obviously I'm not aware of the date in relation to that, but I am happy to deal with that and come back to you on a specific issue. And I'd have to.
I don't think I'm that special, to be honest. And I know it's a fact because I've got a few fixed charge notices before. I know what they look like, and if I had got it, I would have known. Coincidentally, on receipt of a fixed charge notice that I actually did get in October of last year, I was in Naas Court, and I met some people there who were there precisely because they hadn't got a fixed charge notice and had been summoned to court. They spent a day in that court, and because they were pleading not guilty, the judge adjourned and they had to come back another day. Now, that was in October last year and December last year.
And again, this gets into the detail of the points of it.
Part of it, how can we trust what you're saying when we have contradictory evidence of the opposite?
What I am saying is that if you should have received, if a fixed charge notice should have issued on day one for an offence, that now issues. What I can't say in relation to the specific issues, some people come to the court and they say they never received it. So they never received it in the post. That does not say that it wasn't issued.
So you're saying that all of those cases are the fault of on post?
No, I'm not saying the fault is on behalf of anybody. What I am saying is that where a fixed charge notice should have been issued in every case, it is our view here today and belief here today that that is the case. And that's why I say I'd like to see the detail, because a fixed charge notice should issue in every single incidence for where a fixed charge notice applies. That is not to say that some people may not have received it for whatever reason or be aware. And we know this issue appears before the court on a regular basis on post delivery.
Interjected just to clarify in relation to this thing, because it is causing a lot of confusion around the country. Any of the offences linked to what we call the go-safe vans, the vans parked inside the road, or the vehicles that we use to detect the non-intercept type of offences, they're not linked in any way to the issue that we're discussing here in relation to the FCN. It's a totally separate system. They're not linked. I can categorically say that.
I'm not talking about one of those incidents. I'm not talking about a van incident at all.
But I'm saying
just to say, I will have to just give you.
I know we'll get another round again. But
notice.
I wasn't talking about those circumstances. The point here is we have, and the public in particular, have the reality posed in front of them, where they cannot trust information coming from senior Garda management. The Commissioner's opening speech says, expect a lot more, lads. We hear on the radio this morning domestic violence figures might be all over the place. You can't really reassure me in terms of the checkpoint figures. And I'm giving you my own direct personal experience and the personal experience of other people that I met in court on a different day, which belies the narrative that you've put forward, that the problems in the system have been corrected. And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of.
And the problems in the system have been corrected. We have put in an IT solution that stops the one that you're referring to. But by way of clarification, I felt it was important to say, because I've been listening to the social media, the offences, and the vast majority of our speeding offences come from the non-intercept type offences. They are
very
not
special then, because I wasn't talking about an intercept like that.
Well, if I can, no,
just
if I could just. Yeah,
just
Commissioner O'Sullivan just wanted to come back on what you've just raised, but I do have to say I have to move on to another deputy or member, and I will come back to you, Commissioner.
Deputy, I was just going to make the point. Thank you, Chair. I was just going to make the point, if you wish us to look at your specific issues, Assistant Commissioner Flynn will be quite happy to do that, and we can identify if there's something.
What I'm saying is that I think it's a bit of a unique coincidence that I happen to have evidence to contradict what you've said, and I've happened to meet other people who are in the same situation, so I know for a fact that, if you like, the narrative we've been given cannot be accurate. But anyway,
Deputy, I just make the point. It's very important that if there is evidence to suggest that the systems aren't working, that we are very happy and comfortable to actually look at that and identify if there are further systems, and we will take that on board.
Thank you, Commissioner.